Hi everybody, it's Frank here. In this multi-part series of videos, I'm going to show you how to use one of my favorite pieces of software called VirtualBox to set up and run virtual machines. This is something I use every day, and if you're not using it already, something I think you might want to check out. In this video, I'll discuss the benefits of using virtual machines and what you need to get it all working. I'll show you how to get the free VirtualBox software, yes free, and get it installed on both Windows or Linux Mint. I'll then show you how to create a couple of virtual machines running Linux and Windows 8.1. In the remaining parts of this series, I'll show you how to set up and use additional features to really help you get the most out of this excellent software. So what is this software? What does it do? Essentially, it's a software program that lets you install and run other operating systems independently on the same machine as if they were on their own dedicated hardware. This means if I install this on my Windows computer, let's say, then I can use that same computer to host and run other operating systems such as Linux or other Windows operating systems or Solaris or you name it. It's similar in general function to other virtualization software such as VMware or Hyper-V from Microsoft. So why do you want this? I'll give you a few reasons. You can run multiple operating systems at the same time in a lab environment for learning or testing. Another use is you can run Linux on your Windows computer, a great use. Another is you can try out software without risk of messing up your existing operating system. Another is you can test out or learn to use different operating systems entirely, such as different versions of Linux or Solaris or what have you. Another is you can create a Linux OS and surf the web with less risk of malware and then revert to a clean install if you think you have something bad by using something called a snapshot, which I'll discuss in another video on this. Another is you can set up an operating system for your kids to use that you can easily and quickly restore if they mess things up or get viruses. Another good use is if you need to run an older operating system that has software that you cannot or don't want to upgrade to a newer version, you can simply create a VM with this old operating system, install that old software that you have, and use it as normal. And last but not least, you will be able to copy and run an entire operating system you created on your home computer, let's say, and then put it on your laptop or another computer and run the whole thing there as if you created it there. So what operating system will VirtualBox run on? Well, it runs on just about anything from Windows XP on up. It'll also run on Linux, of course, Macintosh and Solaris. So you really have no excuse not to use this stuff. So what kind of operating systems can you install on VirtualBox? Just about virtually anything. On the Windows side, you can load everything from Windows 3.1 on up. You can even load DOS on one of these virtual machines. You can load virtually any flavor of Linux. You can run all the server operating systems from Windows. You can run Solaris, OS2, OpenBSD, you name it. You can probably run it on VirtualBox. So let me show you where to get this and how to get it installed on your machine. So where do we get this software? The place you want to go is www.virtualbox.org. Welcome to virtualbox.org. Click on Downloads and select the download that you want for the operating system you're going to be using. Here is one for Windows hosts. I'm going to want that. This covers both x86 and AMD64, which means it covers 32-bit and 64-bit operating systems. So I'm going to click on that and tell that to save the file. And I also want to get this extension pack for the same operating version. And it comes in one version fits all here. So just download that guy. It's not very big. And while I'm at it, I'm also going to get a version for Linux Mint and show you how to install that in your Linux Mint machine. So we'll click on for Linux hosts. Depending on the version of Linux that you're running, there's a whole bunch of them. Now Linux Mint is going to use the same package as Ubuntu, and we'll just basically get the newest one, and I'm going to use a 64-bit. We'll just click on that and save that guy. Just close that out. Okay, here I am on Linux Mint 17, and I've downloaded the VirtualBox Debian file and also the extension pack, and I'm going to install this guy now. So all you got to do is just double click on this, and that'll open the package installer. Now you can also install this through Software Manager or from the command line, but here's a reason I don't do that. It's because it's an older version. So I tend to prefer to get the latest version directly from virtualbox.org site. So I'm going to close this. I don't want an older one. I want this one. I want 4.3. So you just click on Install Package and give it administrative password. And hurry up and wait. And now through the magic of video editing, that installed in mere seconds. So I'll close that. And if you need to remove the package, you can do so in here in Package Installer. I'm just going to close this and get this out of the way and move this up here. And what we're going to do is right click on this. Notice it changed the icon because VirtualBox is installed now. And you can select Open with Oracle VirtualBox. That's what we want to do, so we just select that. And this starts a VirtualBox Manager and asks you if you want to install the extension pack, which we do. Click Install, scroll down, read all this good stuff, and agree. Enter your password, and give it a second to install the extension pack. Okay, that's it. And now we'll do the same thing on Windows. Okay, so here I am on a fresh install of a Windows 7 computer, and I put the VirtualBox Windows installer file here, and I've also got the extension pack. So what I'm going to do is just double click the installer and say next. Just basically pick all the shortcuts here and install, and this takes a minute or two. And okay to that. Okay to that, and okay to that. Okay, here's a secret. Click this little checkbox and then say install. We won't get those again. All right, I don't want to start it. I'm going to uncheck that and just click finish. And then now I'm going to go in here to this extension pack here. Notice it's changed the icon because it actually is associated with VirtualBox now. So I'm just going to double click on that and tell that to install. And you got to scroll all the way down to the bottom here before you can agree, which of course everybody has read all this, and let this thing install. And there it is. It only took about a second or two. And the VirtualBox Manager is open now. And that's it. That's basically the program. It doesn't have any virtual machines in it. We need to create those. I think what I'm going to do now, since this is a Windows machine, is I've got to install a virtual machine so I can run Linux Mint 17.1. So let's get to that. Okay, now that we have VirtualBox installed on our computer, let's go ahead and create a virtual machine on it. And I've got a ISO file that I downloaded for Linux Mint 17.1 Cinnamon Edition. And I'm going to show you how to install that operating system into a virtual machine directly from that file without having to even burn a disk of it. So to do that, we just click on New and give it a name. Something real creative like Linux Mint 17.1. And since it read my mind, it knows that I want a type Linux operating system. You can see there's a bunch of options in here for Windows, Solaris, BSD, Mac, everything. And the version, and this you want to choose carefully, it'll automatically select this Linux 2.6 3.x version, which is the kernel version of Linux in 64-bit. And you can use that. I haven't actually tried that one. The one I generally use with Mint is I scroll down here to Ubuntu, and then I select either 32-bit or 64-bit, depending on which download I've got. In my case, I've got a 64-bit, which you can see in the file name here. It's got a 64B. So make sure you have 64 or 32 is correct. Click Next. On this page is where you set the memory size that's going to be allocated to your virtual machine. Keep in mind that anything that you allocate here is going to be taken away from your host computer as soon as that virtual machine is started. So you want to make sure that what you set here is going to be adequate RAM for both the virtual machine and the host machine to operate at the same time. Also, if you're going to be running multiple virtual machines at the same time, you want to make sure you have enough RAM for all these things to work together. Generally speaking, I recommend using at least 1 gig of RAM for all machines, virtual and your host machine, because that works pretty well. If you have multiple virtual machines running, I found the actual biggest limitation is hard drive access, and you don't want to have any of these machines going back and forth to a swap file all the time, because that'll slow everything down. So I recommend at least 1 gig. Now, in my machine, I've got 8 gigs of RAM, so I've got plenty to run several virtual machines here, and my host machine right now is running 1.15 gig, and it's using that much really because it's using shared RAM for video, because this machine has no video card. So what I do is I generally set all these up for at least 2 gigs of RAM, and that lets me, with this machine, run 3 different virtual machines at once, plus the host machine, and all of them have enough RAM to really work pretty smoothly and nicely. You can always change this setting later, and I'll show you where, as long as the virtual machine is turned off when you change that. So it's not a big deal to change it once you've set it, but make sure you set it so it's going to work initially. Click Next, and we just take the defaults here, create a virtual hard drive now, and we want a VirtualBox disk image, so leave that at the default. And then when we get to storage on physical hard drive, this is where you're going to set up either a dynamically allocated hard drive or a fixed size. And I like to use the dynamically allocated hard drive as a rule. And what that does is this represents the size of your hard drive that's going to be presented to your virtual machine. And you set that maximum size in this setting that we'll get to next, and it won't go above that size. But since it's dynamically allocated, it will start from 0 and grow in size up to that maximum size as files are added to it. If you do a fixed size, it'll write the entire maximum size of the hard drive as a file all at once. It's a little bit faster in operation with a fixed size, but not that much more. And you're using all that hard drive up when you don't really have to. So generally speaking, I always use dynamically allocated. Works very well. So click Next. Okay, on file location and size, this is where you set that maximum size of the hard drive. And this is something you can't change after the fact. So make sure you set it to something that's going to be very usable in your virtual machine. And I usually set them up around 20 to 30 gig in size. And keep in mind, with dynamically allocated hard drive space, that isn't all used until you've actually written enough files onto there. And then just click Create. And there it is. We've just created our first virtual machine. We don't have any operating system on it yet, but we've got a bunch of settings created here. And before I install the operating system, we want to go over some of these settings and tweak it a little bit to optimize it. So just click on any of these. Click on General, and I go to System. And here's where we set that RAM allocated. Remember, I said you could change that. You can always change this when the machine is turned off. Leave that as it is. Click on Processor. And one thing I like to do here is increase the number of CPUs shown to the virtual machine up to at least 2. And that seems to make a nice improvement in speed. And then we'll go down to Display. And here's the setting you do want to change. Video memory. You want to crank this thing all the way up to 128 meg. And that'll make a nice improvement. Some things don't work hardly at all with the memory that they allocate there, so make sure you do that. And since we're running Linux, I can enable 3D acceleration in there. So we'll click on Network. And in Network, it automatically enables a network adapter and attaches it to the virtual machine with network address translation. That generally works just fine. I, however, like to change that to bridged adapter and then select the network card that I want to use for that. I'll use that one. And with the bridged adapter setting, it basically uses the device driver on your host system directly. And I like to do that. I found it to be a bit more reliable for some of the things I do. So if NAT doesn't work, give this one a try. And on USB, because we installed the extension pack, it allows us to enable a USB 2 controller to the virtual machine. Without the extension pack, you only get USB 1. USB 3 is not supported yet. And shared folders is something we'll do in a future video. And that's about it. Just click OK on this, and we're ready to start our virtual machine up and install the operating system. Okay, so here it wants to know where your startup disk is to install the operating system from. Normally you might install that from the DVD drive, but in this case I want to install it from this Linux Mint ISO file that I downloaded. And for that, you just click on the little folder icon, and it goes to my desktop. There's my disk image file, the ISO file that I got directly from Linux Mint website. And I just select that, select Open, and tell it to start. And here it's going to automatically start all by itself, exactly the same way as if I was doing this on a fresh hard drive computer. Okay, so we've got our Linux Mint 17.1 installed, and it's all done and ready to go. If we look down here in the bottom right corner, we'll see a few icons that are specific to VirtualBox. The first one is going to be the hard drive. You'll see hard drive activity. This one will be CD or DVD drive. You'll see activity there. Your USB, your network, it'll tell you when that's being used. Video capture. And here you can get some statistics on your machine. And this one tells you whether your pointer is captured and whether mouse integration is on. And what does that mean? Because this guest operating system supports the mouse pointer integration, that means that I can move my mouse from the virtual machine directly onto my host desktop and back without any problems. It's seamless. And some of the other older operating systems don't do that, in which case you'll need to use this button down at the very bottom right corner, the one that says Right Control, and that is your host key for VirtualBox. And what you can do with that is just click on that right control key, and then your mouse will go back over to your host machine. But we're going to get rid of that issue here because we're going to install the guest editions. And the guest editions will make this all seamless with all the operating systems. So let's go ahead and install the guest editions. Let me just close that out. And we'll do that for this Linux Mint installation. And the way to do that is to go in here into the Devices menu and click on Insert Guest Editions CD Image. And then it gives you this little warning that's intended to be automatically started. So let's just tell it to run and give it a password. You wish to continue? Yes. And we'll give it a second or two here to finish its install. And what this is going to do, in addition to automatically capturing your mouse and keyboard for you without having to fiddle around with the right-hand control key or anything, is it also helps to integrate the graphics of the virtual machine a lot better as well. So it just makes a lot of things work much better. It also allows you to use some advanced features that I'll be covering in upcoming videos in this series. So there we go, done, plus return to close this window, done. So now that that's done, I want to go ahead and restart this machine. So I'm just going to restart it as normal here. Restart. And there's our Linux Mint 17.1 all set up and installed. This VBox Editions, you can just eject that. And that's it. I'm going to go ahead and close this, and we'll go install Windows 8.1. Okay, now that Mint is happy, let me show you how to do an install of Windows 8.1. And the way to do that is basically the same thing. We just click on New, label it, and it reads my mind. It knows that I want to do Windows, and it even knew that I wanted 8.1 64-bit, which is interesting. And you can see you have choices here all the way from Windows 3.1 on up to Windows 2012, which would be the server, or other Windows where you can get DOS and things like that. So we'll click Next. This one we'll leave that at 2048 meg, 2 gigs of RAM. Same thing here, same thing here, same thing, dynamically allocated hard drive. This one, it set it at 25. I'll bump that up to about 30 or so. Create that. And there we go. Click on Settings. And we'll go into System. And we'll change that processor to 2 or more if you want. Display, we'll bump that up to 128. Now it's kept my settings from the last one here. And in Windows, you want to enable 2D acceleration. And network, we want to change this to a bridged adapter because that's just what I do. And OK that, and we'll start this up. And this time I'm using a regular DVD drive, so it's already set to host drive D, so I just click start and that's it. And it's going to start that up and start installing Windows 8.1. Okay, so here we have our Windows 8.1 machine has installed itself. I'm going to go ahead and log into that. And from the start screen, I'll show you how to go ahead and install the guest editions. And what you want to do is go back up to Devices and Insert Guest Editions CD Image. Just click on that. Click on this. And just select Run the Editions. And it goes right to the desktop. It gives you a warning here if you want to trust this. And we'll say yes. And next. Get it up here so you can see it. Click Next and install. And leave this checked here. Always trust software from Oracle, and then click Install. Otherwise, I think you get a ton of messages about that. So, and then reboot now. And there we have it. Our guest editions are installed. Now you can also view your virtual machines in full screen mode, and that'll make them look exactly like an installed operating system where they take up the entire screen. And you can switch between multiple ones as well. Just by taking your mouse and putting it down to the bottom middle approximately of your screen, a small pop-up will come up and you can minimize that one and then go to another one. So that is it. I've got Windows 8 running. I'm going to go ahead and just minimize this, get it out of my way. And I'm going to go ahead and start up my Linux Mint here. And there it is. I've got 3 operating systems running here at the same time, 2 virtual machines, and then my host computer. And I can work with any one of them just with a simple click. It's just like opening another window literally and using that operating system. So that's it. I hope you found this informative. If you did, give me a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, be sure and subscribe to my channel so that you won't miss the other parts of the How to Use VirtualBox series, which are coming up shortly. So until next time, cheers.